Today we are going to rank the Harry Potter movies, and I want to make very quick criteria before we start ranking them, as I am not going to rank them based on how well they are adapted from the books. If I did that, the case would be that Half-Blood Prince and Goblet of Fire would be dead last because they are terrible adaptations from the book. And we are including the Crimes of Grindelwald, so we can't really adapt those from the books. Or we're including all the Fantastic Beasts movies, so we can't really adapt them from the books. So that's why we're doing this movie tier list is based on the movies alone. Like if I just saw the movies and had no understanding or idea of the books, how entertaining and how well made is the movie itself. And we're starting from the very beginning. We are starting with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's or Philosopher's Stone. And I'm going to put this as exceeds expectations. And the reason it doesn't get ranked higher is because I think it is a somewhat faithful book adaptation, but I don't think it's the most exceptional movie that they made. I think this is one of the most nostalgic movies that is in the series. Every time I watch this, I'm immediately transported back to like when I initially watched it, and it feels very Christmassy to me, and it's just a lovely movie. But sometimes this movie bores me a little bit. I put it on this list as exceeds expectations because I love it with everything in me. But, you know, it's just, for me right now, it's like a background movie. I could probably recite this movie, as everyone can, with the chess scene with Hermione. Ron, no. Everyone can recite that, so it exceeds expectations. It's not outstanding. There's I don't know if any, we'll have a few outstanding, I think, but definitely exceeds expectations. Chamber of Secrets, I think it's right here as far as a movie is concerned. It's an okay made movie. But it's just not, it doesn't have the nostalgic factor that Philosopher's Stone has for me. And it's my least favorite book. And it's kind of also one of my least favorite movies. I think this is not, it's a little bit of a boring movie, to be honest, if I'm completely honest about that. But Prisoner of Azkaban is the first one that I'm throwing in. Actually, I'm not going to, I know this is really controversial because everyone loves this movie, but I'm going to throw it in the exceeds expectations. No. I can't do that. I'm going to throw it in the outstanding category. And the reason I'm going to do that is because this movie is really the transition from their childhood to the adulthood. Honestly, in the books, I think the transition between childhood and adulthood is in Goblet of Fire. But I think Prisoner of Azkaban is a really, really well-made movie. It changed the movie and gave the movies a very dark feel after that. Like the first two movies, you know, it's light, very childlike. And then this movie came out with Alfonso Cuarón directing it and just kind of like destroyed the childlike stereotype of these movies. This Goblet of Fire is not a good adaptation. It is a terrible, terrible adaptation from the book. I want to be very, very clear about that. But it is an entertaining movie. There are great comedic lines in this movie. Fred and George are fantastic in this movie. The hair is so ridiculous. It is actually entertaining in this movie. It is a decently well-made movie, in my opinion. There are significant flaws in this movie for book to movie. And there's one thing that I cannot get over in this movie, which this movie made it so it kind of insulted people's intelligence in this movie. Actually, you know what? I'm going to boost it down just because it insults people's intelligence to a slight degree, that if you're watching this, as soon as you see the little tongue jut thing that Barty Crouch Jr. does, you immediately know that he's impersonating Moody. In my opinion, it's a very easy movie to decipher. So I'm going to kind of place it there as acceptable. It's an acceptable movie. It actually has some really great and moving scenes, but it's just an acceptable movie. Order of the Phoenix is arguably the best adaptation, along with Deathly Hallows Part 1. Actually, the first two movies are probably the best adaptation. But this is a really good adaptation. I'm going to put this as exceeds expectations because it did exceed my expectations. After I saw Goblet and thought the adaptation was so bad, I was not really excited for Order of the Phoenix, but it came out and it did exceed my expectations. The battle at the Ministry of Magic between Dumbledore and Voldemort was really well done. Really excited to see that on screen. And it just had a lot of interest to it. Luna was fantastic. The Thestrals were absolutely beautiful. It has some flaws as a movie, but it exceeded my expectations. This is going to be the most controversial one on the entire list. and I think this is the best made movie of the original 7 or the original 8 movies. And this is the worst adaptation of a book to a movie out of the entire series, in my opinion. And they fail on certain things. They completely mischaracterize Harry. There's a scene at the end where Harry, instead of being immobilized, just watches Dumbledore die, which is never in Harry's character in the books. So that really infuriates me. But this is a really, really well-made movie. And it has my favorite scene in the entire film franchise, which is the story of Francis the Fish that Horace Slughorn tells Harry. It is one of the most beautiful, as far as just a film is concerned. This is the best made film, in my opinion, out of the original 8. Deathly Hallows Part 1 is a good film. It's a great film. I actually really like this. This is probably one of the better adaptations from book to movie as well. It's a good film. It's really entertaining. There are some dry moments that I think the filmmakers could have kind of buttoned up a little bit, which is why it's not in the outstanding category. But it's a well-made film. I don't mind it. The culmination of the film, I want to place it as poor, but I'm going to just place this as acceptable, Deathly Hallows Part 1. I know we weren't really ranking this based on adaptation from book to movie, but I cannot escape some of the things that this movie does that just kind of mess around with the adaptation from book to movie. And as far as like a movie is concerned, the end scene is not really all that dramatic. They have brilliant music in this. They actually have really, really brilliant moving scenes in this. You know what? I'm going to put this one higher because there is one scene that I truly do love. Actually, there's a few different scenes that I do love. But Pierre Totem Locomotor, I've always wanted to use that spell, is just really, really brilliant. It's really quaint. There's some really good lines that they deliver in this movie as well. So I am going to place it as exceeds expectations. It's kind of on the same level as Goblet of Fire to me, but I'm going to just place it as exceeds expectations. Now, this is going to be slightly controversial, but this is the first Fantastic Beasts movie. I am going to rank this as outstanding. I think that this is the best movie that Harry Potter has made as far as a movie is concerned. Again, we don't have the adaptation from book to movie, although Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a book. It is a textbook giving you a list of all the beasts. It is not a plot-driven story like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the movie. This movie is exceptional, in my opinion. I think this movie gets a little bit too much hate, a little bit more hate than it really should have. It introduced things that were perfect. It had a really good balance of being a sequel or being a prequel to the actual original 8 movies, and it added more to the universe. It gave you some like little nods about what things that happened in the prior thing, but it also just set up an entirely new storyline that we had not really heard of, and it kind of like floored me. I thought this was a really well-made movie. The magic in it is exceptional. The visual aspects of things are really, really brilliant. The acting, I think this is probably the best acting in any of the series on all of these people. I think Jude Law does a great job as Dumbledore. I think I'm not sure who plays Queenie or who plays Queenie's sister or Jacob or Newt, but all these people they were great actors. I really felt like they nailed a lot of their role. Crimes of Grindelwald, I'm going to place as poor. I didn't mind this movie as much as a lot of other people, but I think there were some issues with it that made me really, really hesitant for the series. The whole idea of there being another Dumbledore really, really could have messed with canon. So at the end of this movie, when I saw this movie, I was petrified that they were going to really screw something up, which is why I'm going to rank this one, which is really controversial because a lot of people hate this movie. I'm going to rank it as exceeds expectations because it really did exceed my expectations. It wasn't an outstanding movie. Really, it probably should be in the acceptable range because it wasn't a really well-made movie. The duel at the end was really lackluster, I thought. But as far as how they wrapped up the storyline, I thought they did surprisingly well considering they were going to make 5 movies and only made 3 movies, and the whole reveal I don't want to give away too many spoilers if you haven't seen it, which you're probably gonna. You know what? Screw that, because you've probably seen it if you're watching a tiered ranking list of the whole idea that Aurelius Dumbledore is a child of Aberforth Dumbledore was so fascinating to me. And I thought they wrapped up the plot holes that they really could have made in The Crimes of Grindelwald really well in The Secrets of Dumbledore. I thought it was a really well-made movie. Some serious issues with it, obviously, as I have with all these movies, really, with how they are adapted from the book to the movie. But these movies, I have issues with how they're just messing around with some magic in the movies. But I thought it was a really, really good movie. I didn't mind it so much. So that is my tier list. I think that is kind of where they are. And then as a side note, if we're ranking these based on adaptation, this is going to be like an extra. If we're ranking these based on how well they're adapted, let's put all these movies, all of them as troll. If we're ranking them based on an adaptation, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets are in the Exceeds Expectations. They're in the acceptable category. I'm going to be very hard with ranking these movies. Deathly Hallows Part 2 is a poor adaptation. Half-Blood Prince is a dreadful adaptation. No, this is actually pretty. This is a Exceeds Expectations adaptation. This is Deathly Hallows. Order of the Phoenix, I think, is Exceeds Expectations. Order of the Phoenix is Exceeds Expectations. It exceeded my expectations. Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets are like shot for shot from the book with a few missing scenes. So they're just like acceptable. They're like good, but they don't like change much, or like they weren't, I don't know. I have an issue with some of those. Goblet of Fire was dreadful as far as an adaptation is concerned. Deathly Hallows Part 1. Which one? Deathly Hallows Part 2. This is probably my tier list for how well they are adapted from book to movie. Goblet of Fire, Half-Blood Prince. Yeah. I don't think any of them are outstanding as far as an outstanding movie from book to movie, to be honest. So this is my tiered list. So there you go.